Ted Williams is arguably known as one of the greatest baseball players of all time, certainly one of the greatest hitters of all time. Back in the mid-90s, he comes up and writes a book on who he thinks are the 20 greatest hitters of all time. He has a whole formula, part of an ESPN documentary, and he was a visionary. So he looked at slugging percentage and on-base percentage 30 years before anybody else did. So he comes up with the 20 greatest hitters of all time. It's got Ruth, Cobb, Mantle, Aaron, and so on. And he decides that he needs an artist for this project. He's going to have a Hitters Hall of Fame induction ceremony to introduce these 20 greatest hitters. He hires a 17-year-old kid from New Jersey.
I think even to this day, it's still very surreal for me that I was able to paint this monumental painting for the greatest hitter, arguably of all time. The interesting story of the Ted Williams 20 Greatest Hitters is, well, the fact that I was only 17 years old when I was painting it, but the evolution of getting to that point was having a painting of mine in the National Baseball Hall of Fame at 15 years old. And I really, truly believe that that led to the opportunity to have me paint this painting for Ted Williams. I met the Ted Williams Museum staff at a trading card show, actually. And I believe that year was the first year of the museum. And when they saw my work and my story, like a lot of projects for me, they literally on the spot said to me, would you be interested in painting the 20 greatest hitters that Ted Williams will choose? So my reaction, I remember at that show, was I just couldn't believe it. So when I had completed the original painting, and at that time, and maybe even still today, it's one of the largest paintings I'd ever painted. All of the painting was painted in watercolor, just like all of my work today. Right after I had painted the original painting, had the opportunity to meet Ted Williams himself. So that was an incredible moment for me. So not only am I painting all these players, but I knew I had the opportunity to eventually meet them in person. So I flew out with my sister and actually met Ted. The original painting had already been completed, was hanging in Ted Williams' house for a while, which is also a pretty remarkable thing. And I remember, meeting him and just walking into the room and seeing him. Even for me today, it's one of the more surreal moments. And knowing that, again, the painting hung in his house. He was going through all the players and all the players he had seen, and the only player he never saw play there really was Shoeless Joe Jackson. He had that John Wayne, approach to him in his voice and how he acted, and he was like, this looks just like Shoeless Joe Jackson. This is exactly how I felt like he would hit, and it was incredible. So I remember as a 17-year-old, I'm collecting. I had a bat sign. They gave me a bat sign by Ted right there. Took that incredible picture with Ted Williams, which is so meaningful to me, and it was just an incredible day that day. So I flew out with my parents and went to the induction. My painting was on display. It was on program covers, lithographs that were given out. The lineup was over 50 Hall of Famers. I believe at that time it was the largest gathering of baseball Hall of Famers in one place. And I had this incredible table sitting next to Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Ted Williams, and Mickey Mantle. And so all the players that were live at that time, including Frank Robinson, Ralph Kiner, Stan Musial, all these guys came up and signed the original painting. Joe DiMaggio was one of the only players that wasn't there who would later on sign the painting, and Joe D was always great to me.
As part of the allure of the piece, all 8, and Ted being the 9th, but all 8 of the living 20 greatest hitters of all time have signed it. So that includes Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Stan Musial, Frank Robinson, Mike Schmidt, and Ralph Kiner. If you think about how special that is, that there's probably no other piece of baseball memorabilia that has Ted, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Aaron, Mays. I mean, these, and Musial, those are not only 20 greatest hitters of all time. Most people would put them in the top 5 or 6. So it just adds a memorabilia aspect to it. He's clearly regarded as one of the top, not only artists in the world, but sports artists, but also watercolor artists. His use of colors really brings out the, particularly when he does uniform colors and how they look. And when you walk into a room and you see a Fiorentino, it's very identifiable, and I love that about his work.
I feel like this painting could be seen as one of the greatest baseball paintings ever done. And I think from probably a historical standpoint, but also from a collectible standpoint, in the sense that I don't think there are any paintings that are autographed by DiMaggio, Mantle, Ted Williams, all these players on one painting. And then obviously the history of it, where Ted chose these guys and why he chose these guys. So it is a pretty remarkable piece for all those things. I'm very proud to share it and tell a story about it.
James is also the youngest inductee ever into the New York Society of Illustrators, which also includes Rockwell and many famous artists. The Ted Williams painting that James did at the age of 18, given its historical significance, given the fact that a book was written on it, and the fact that it hung in Ted's house, established him as one of the most iconic sports artists of all time, to be commissioned by arguably the greatest baseball hitter of all time to do this. You know, you can compare him to Rockwell, you can put, look at Warhols of the world and other great artists. In my opinion, it puts him right up there with the top.